Hello, friends. It's the Cinemondo podcast. We're talking about a series that we all just saw called Ecam.
Mm-hmm.
You know about it, Kathy.
We do. So, what it is, it's a series of 7 films. So we've been talking a lot about it because it's kind of a cool radical idea that I'm really on board for. So it's 7 films. You just pay one flat fee. You get to see all 7 films. You get behind the scenes stuff. You get scripts. You can learn how the scripts are. You get interviews with directors and behind the scenes. And I think they'll probably add to it, but it's a great package deal of getting in depth into some indie filmmaking. So I love how they're doing this. And I'm hoping they called this season 1. It'd be great if they could do another season, not only just for Kannada, but for all languages, if they start kind of doing their own streaming platforms. And that way they have control over content. And they can make it as in-depth as they want. They can have as many as they want. And the content doesn't matter. They can do whatever they feel like they want to do, which I
Yeah.
love the creative freedom of that. So this is
Yeah.
this is executive produced by Rakshit Shetty, who's fantastic Kannada actor, producer, director. He's done some incredible films like Kantara. He was also part of that Side A, Side B, great 2 films about the man who makes the really bad decision in his relationship to take the responsibility for a crime. I mean, he was amazing in that. So just all around A-list stuff. So
yeah. No, I absolutely loved this series. There's seven episodes,
yes.
different lengths. Some are a little bit longer, some shorter. I loved some and liked some less, so it's a little bit up and down through. But in general, the whole thing, just watch the whole thing because it is kind of sits as a unit because what I got from it was each episode had a kind of sense, and I haven't read the show Bible or any of the extra stuff. I didn't want to read that before I did my review of it because I didn't want to know what their intent was. I wanted to see if I could figure it out myself.
Exactly.
But what I figured out was that each episode is people's relationships with something. The first episode is relationships with other humans, people. Second one is relationship with nature. Third is relationship with finances and success and a feeling of value and self-worth. Each one has a different idea about relationships with things. And that's what I liked about it. It's not like overt. It's not like the same characters going through it. These are each individual separate, entities. Each film has its own place, setting, whatever, but they all take place in the same general area.
And I thought they did a great job with casting. Also, they cast Shalini Kadugu and Shine Shetty. She plays the young girl who meets Thomas, Shine Shetty, the cute boy in the neighborhood. And they kind of exchange looks, and there's some sparks flying, So it's mostly like her interior kind of monologue in her head. It's like it's female centric, so it's based on her perception of her surroundings and the men in it. So she's at a bus stop. She sees this cute guy and she's like, oh, and I love her too, because she wasn't this glamorous or anything. She looked really young. She wasn't wearing any, makeup. She looked very, very, natural and she looked really young and naive. And so she sees that and she has this whole thing in her head, like how it's going to play out, who he really is, and her fantasies about like what he is and her anticipation on what their relationship could be like. So, they're both pretty shy. So, she's kind of, they're exchanging looks and this was actually directed by, let's get into that too. So this was directed by Sankar Gandharan and Vivek Vinod. So they directed a couple of these episodes.
Right.
So they did a great job, I think, of kind of capturing that naivete of, young girls who, when they're, looking at, love from that side, because a lot of the stuff is worked out for them. Like they're promised marriage to people. They don't really have a lot of say a lot of times, especially in small villages, to who they get to marry. So this was kind of radical for her to actually be able to choose who she wants to marry if she is. Right. So I love that. So it starts off as kind of a rom-com. Right. Like very cute. It's very awkward. He's over there like, I love the little natural moments where you feel like you're actually in the space where he's just making tea for people at this little shop, and they just have these kind of day-to-day little moments, beautifully shot, little like close-ups of certain scenarios that were great. I just love that. And then she makes the first move, and she gives him a little love letter that she wrote, which I thought was so, like, cute. And he was kinda like,
Yeah.
wow, like, kinda blown away that she would make the first move, like, that was kinda cool to him. Like,
Yeah.
he gets this letter, and he's like, "What?" It's so funny because it seems so quaint and cute because, in America, it's just like, you just go up and you just it's all real blatant. There's no, like,
Right.
cuteness behind it. It's like just all, "Ah." So I love that, and so that kinda kicks off a series of events, where it starts kinda heating up. I think he's really well cast because he has these big doe eyes. He's very handsome. There's a scene where she walks in on him. He doesn't have a shirt on, and he's kinda playing guitar, like the classic thing. She walks in and you see she's just, like, stunned that she's seeing him.
Right.
He kinda turns around and he's like, "Oh." He starts putting his shirt on, and everything's really awkward, and it's just so painful. They did such a great job, I thought, of that awkwardness of like, "Who, what, huh?
Yeah, what do I do? What are you
What do
supposed
I
to do?
say?"
What's the right thing to do? And
I know, it was so
I love
cute.
how the kind of almost like a stereotype of the cute boy getting off the
Mhm.
bus and he's got a guitar.
Yeah.
And what is a more iconic thing for the cute boy to have
I love
for a
that.
young girl than a guitar? It's like, oh, he's so sensitive.
So
He probably
I
writes poetry too. And and her,
Yeah.
I like the way she's depicted in this too. Without those little subtitles of her inner dialogue,
Mhm.
she might have been just a bit boring, but I love the fact that they put her thoughts
Yes.
in there.
Yep.
um and those are kind of what define her character more than anything. I mean, her characterization, the actress's use of her face and everything and her
Yeah.
expressions, of course, is beautifully done. And
Yeah.
we, us being Westerners watching this, don't understand the language or the subtleties in the way the
Yeah.
language is used. So it's the expressions that carry it, and
Mhm.
it didn't have tons and tons of dialogue.
No, it didn't. It was all
Y-
internal thoughts, really.
yeah.
Very, very small little, small talk. And I love too was even just reactionary, like, she would see him at the bus stop and kinda turn around, and her dialogue's like, "Stop being nervous, stop it.
Right.
Stop, don't be so weird about it. It's getting weird now." And she just turn around, or like the bus stops to get her, but she doesn't wanna leave yet because he's still sitting there, so she's kinda like, "Doop, doop, doop," like, looking around, "Not gonna catch the bus." And guy's like, "Get on the bus, get on the bus." And then
Yeah.
the subtitles
All
are like,
right.
"Move along,
Bye.
idiot, just leave, idiot."
My
So funny.
favorite one is where the scene where he's, I guess, staying with a friend of hers or her auntie or
Yes.
something, and that's when she sees him without his shirt. And then the
Yeah.
auntie comes in and she's like, "Oh, this is Thomas. He's staying with us." And she looks at him and she goes, "Hello." She says something like that, and then underneath it, it says, "My voice."
Yeah, that was really funny too, this little
Like,
little
"Oh,
squeak.
hi."
Yeah,
Like,
it was adorable. So, I love that. I don't think I've really seen that before, like, just that sort of how you're talking and how your perception of how you're appearing. It's
and
really
how
funny.
when you first, if you're nervous or something and you're like, "Oh, hi," it's um great to meet you.
Then you're
You
like,
just sound like such a
"Oh
dork and you're
god.
like, ah.
Oh god," it was so funny. And then she
Yeah.
has this, like, big moment of when she's giving him the letter, like, she has this big dance song number, which I
Yes.
thought was fantastic. It's just on the beach, and she's with these young boys wearing suspenders and bow ties. Like, it was like this
Boys
sorta,
and
like,
girls, yeah, it's just like a
weird fantasy that you would have, like, "I'm doing a song number in the middle of my life, and this is what it looks like." It's
and the
so
lyric and lyrically, it was really sweet too. The way she wrote it is something that I thought was really poignant too. It's that idea of her having these feelings. And when
yeah.
you're young and you have those feelings, if I can recall when I
Did we
was
have those
young,
feelings?
I don't remember, but I think no, when you're young, you don't forget that.
It's very confusing.
You don't forget it. You don't forget how you felt, and you wonder, am I weird? Am I overreacting? And I wonder if that
Yep,
person feels the same way. And that's one of the parts of her letter. Do you
yep,
feel the same as I do? And
yeah,
I think she wasn't asking so much, do you like me like I like
yeah,
you? I think what she was I think the impression I got was that she was saying, do you have these
Yeah.
intense emotions that I have as a young
Yeah.
person? And am I weird, or is that
Toward me.
something?
It was
Yeah.
definitely, "Do you feel the same?" is what I
Yeah.
mean, like, "Do you feel the same as me?" And that's where it really starts taking off. So we have she gives him the letter, and then he gives her a letter,
Yeah. And she's so
which
thrilled. She got
oh my
in a
god,
flower
a flower with the letter, and she's like, and
from the
she
sweet
can't
boy
even
with the
read it
guitar.
right away. I love it too. She's like, she's gotta run, I gotta read it somewhere private, somewhere quiet, just to really
Somewhere
soak it in.
beautiful and special, like a place that she felt like, okay, this is the beautiful place. I'm going to mark this moment with this
Yes.
beautiful tree and the shade under the
Oh
tree.
my
And she
god, it's so good.
she opens the letter.
And he's smiling when he gives it to her. You think things are going well, and they are. Like, the letter starts, and it sounds like, "Oh my god, her dreams are coming true," and she's like he's like, "Yes, I wanna go talk to your family and get married," and she's like, "Oh," just her heart fluttering, and she's so excited, and
And you hear, interestingly, a lot of times when people read letters in movies, you hear the letter in the voice of the person who wrote it. Like,
Right.
normally, if she's reading
Yes,
it, you would hear it being read in his voice. But in this case, you heard her voice, which I thought was really interesting
that is
because
interesting.
of the way she reads it, and the way, as she reads it, her voice kind of falters and
I love that.
changes and gets a little bit more and more. It was
It was
perfect to have her read it.
so good. And you're right. I love the way her voice faltered where she starts reading about how he goes, you know, you what was the line? Something like your careless way that you wear your shawl,
Right,
you don't cover yourself properly. We're gonna have to work on that. That kind
right.
and she's
The
like, we're gonna
indecent.
what and then she kind of reads it again, like, am I reading this right? And he goes, yes,
Yeah.
and we'll get married. We'll move out of town off to this my original village where the fish isn't as good, but it'll be and she's thinking, first of all, and then again, kind of like disses her at the same time, like, you aren't, modest enough. You and the fact you gave me the letter first was very, like not aggressive, but he kind of, says she's a
It's
little
like
like,
inappropriate, and
yeah,
but
kind of giving her the
despite these
yes,
flaws.
despite these things, maybe. And it's like, wow. And I like how your heart's breaking for her because it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So all of this inside her head was all just like projection. Like it really
Mhm.
wasn't about who he really was. She didn't know him. She wasn't like thinking about what he was like. And it was just like, ah. So I love like after she reads that letter, she goes
Yeah.
back to the bus stop. She sees him over there in the little shop and she just kind of walks past him. And I love her, she walks past and she just goes, pulls off the
Takes
scarf, just like, "Mhm." And when he's like so then you're like, "Oh, yay!" Because 'cause you're so afraid she's gonna go, "It'll be fine," and then just be this
Yeah.
completely submissive, he'll kill her spirit because
Yeah.
you feel like she's very spirited and confident and modern, and he wants to, like, regress her all of her values, and then she goes over and sits next to the other guy who's been watching this all along. This kinda older guy, he's not really cute like the other guy, but he's kinda, like, "Oh," and so they're like, "I want a nice guy," you know? So they go sit next to him, and then he leaves because he's so intimidated. So
Yeah.
cool. I loved this episode so much.
It was really nice. One thing about it, when I was watching it, I was thinking at first it was like, oh, you don't know how it's going to end. And you're
Yeah.
thinking, a lot of times these romance kind of things, you don't get enough. You don't get enough. I mean, you did see him being compassionate. You saw a few things that
Yeah.
she liked about him,
Mhm.
things that made her like him. But a lot of times in shows like this and stories like this, you see people sort of falling for someone totally based on how they look,
Yeah.
or this imaginary fantasy of the person, like
Mhm.
that scene where she imagines him on the beach, walking
Yes.
along, it's in slow motion coming over the horizon, and it's like, he's in a movie or something, and he's so cute and so
So cute.
slow motion,
Yeah.
and you think, what is it? I mean, it's such a young person thing to have those
Yeah.
thoughts about someone you just sort of saw across the
Yeah.
room or from the bus stop or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
And I thought it's a little bit unrealistic, and it's kind of disappointing sometimes to see stories like that where people have these immediate,
Yeah.
without any kind of,
Yeah.
like, when you really fall in love with someone, you don't, it's not all about how they look, that
Yeah.
that may be the first thing you notice about them,
Yeah.
but then you have to
Part of the equation.
get to know that person,
Yeah.
because if you get to know them, and I thought this maybe wasn't going to do that, but it absolutely did. That's what this was about.
Yes.
It was about the idea of a person's sort of unrealistic fantasies about someone they just sort of saw across the room, and it's like, oh, and then, but then once you get, it's that disappointment that we've all felt,
Yeah.
where you're like, wow, that person is cool, and then you get to know them a little bit, and you're like,
They're
that
not
person
cool
is
at all.
absolutely not cool.
And
And then
also,
suddenly what's weird is that person is no longer attractive, physically,
no, all of a
visually
sudden
attractive.
everything falls
It's like,
away.
yeah,
And I like too, like she had the strength to like realize it and keep her integrity and walk away from that. Even though
yeah,
she'd invested a lot of fantasy and a lot of her time into it, she went, no, no,
not for
not gonna have
me.
this. Nope, nope. So I like that they didn't have her just kind of try and follow through and change him, which is what a lot of people want to do. Is like, it'll be fine. We'll get married. I'll make him, he'll
We'll
loosen up. Everything will
compromise.
be fine. No, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
So I love that they had her be defiant. I think that was like the best part of that whole thing was her turning her back on that guy when she realized
Yeah,
he wasn't the right guy. It was really,
it's
really
kind of a
cool.
modern idea, like there's so much tradition in some
Mhm.
countries that it's a big deal to break the
Yeah.
tradition or to criticize the
Yeah.
tradition. And the fact that she did is so, I bet this film is kind of meaningful for a lot of people
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
present day, who are not happy with some of the traditions, or
Mhm.
like, that's not how I want it's my life,
Right.
why should I do that stuff,
Right. And that's sort of how they're positioning the series of films. It's like it's emotions and situations we can all relate to.
Yeah,
Like the disappointment, the disillusion, like and a lot of these, these stories pertain to, like we're saying, like a state of mind or an emotion that everyone on some level understands. And so I like that they gave us that story. I like that it had the twist at the end. I thought it was gonna be just one of this like linear, like, oh, they meet at the bus stop, they get married, everything's fine. I like that there was that little bit of twist, a little more depth about like, women having control over their own lives and her being able to choose whether to be with him or not. That was actually very, very cool. I really loved it.
yeah,
Really great, great intro. It was episode 1, so it was our big
yeah,
intro into the series. Very,
yeah.
very happy with that first episode.
I know, it was like, it, and all of the episodes, I have to say, are filmed and told. The stories are told with the same level
Mhm.
of care. There's a pacing to it, to the stories. They're not all. This one was 39 minutes. The next one is 45 minutes.
Mhm.
Then there's a 39-minute one. There's one
Yeah.
that's 22 minutes.
Mhm.
So they're all kind of short. They're short films.
Yeah.
None are over an hour. So they're all
Yeah.
short stories that are told really well. The storytelling,
Mhm.
I think,
Yeah.
is the most powerful aspect of
Yeah.
these. They appear to be somewhat low budget, but I wouldn't classify these as low
No.
budget looking films.
No.
They're the performances in them, the acting,
Yeah.
and the level of skill in the production, the photography, the sound, everything about the
Mhm.
production, everything about the performances, the casting, all that stuff. The
Mhm.
music
Yeah.
is top
Really
notch.
good. Really good. So very impressed. Gorgeous sound, great cinematography, very high end and
Yeah,
prestige. So highly recommend.
yeah,
Join. We'll have a link in the description. We'll have a link on the video. It's only I think it's like $4 in America. It's like for all of this
$4.
content,
Yeah,
$4, less than coffee at Starbucks, basically. So just do that. You have all this access to some great content. So we're promoting that. You also support the channel because it'll be through our
yeah.
link and it'd be great. Guys can do some good stuff. So
And also for that $4, you get access. I mean, it's almost like you join
yeah.
this little community around these
Yeah.
films, and you get access to their. One of the things that I read on their website was that they wanted people to feel involved, engaged,
Yeah.
and a part of the community.
Yeah.
So they're
Love that.
offering. I mean, you can download the scripts and read the
Yeah.
scripts. And if you're a writer, these would be great scripts to read, to learn how to, some storytelling
Mhm.
chops. And
Yeah.
also, you can download the show Bible, which is what they call a document that television
Mhm.
shows and movies will have. Mostly television shows when they have other writers come in, they will give them the show Bible, which basically says, this is our show. And we like, I always use Star Trek as an example. The show Bible for Star Trek would say, Mr. Spock has no emotions and he comes from Vulcan. So don't write any scenes where he's laughing, or, you know, you have to know the characters and what the show is about, and the philosophy of the show, the intent of the show, and the style of the show, things like that are in the show Bible. So that's a really fascinating thing to read about a show.
Yeah.
And there's some documentaries about the production, about the making of, which of course we all love.
Yep. So this is a great project. It's a Kannada film industry, really like bringing us some great content. Rakshit Shetty, who you can count on to bring us some quality. So definitely check it out. And then be sure to put comments. We'd love to discuss it with you guys. What you think of each film, what you think about this overall, what was your favorite, and let us know in the comments, and we'll be sure to read them and respond.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
See you guys later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.